So if you're flagging a wee bit with your vision of the factors producing the development gap, maybe this video is going to help you. Here they are, the different factors that are outlined in the notes: historical factors, dependent primary products, environmental factors, debt, and politics. So we'll take a wee look at these now. So the key thing with historical factors is this whole issue of colonialism. It says here the pattern of LEDCs sending primary products to MEDCs is a legacy of colonialism. So let's look at how colonialism works. And what's the issue then with primary products? Why do they keep the countries poor? Well, first of all, they don't earn as much money. When you process something, you add value to it, you can sell it for more money. The primary products prices vary a lot. So you can have a graph, you may remember looking at this in class, and the price will go up and down very considerably. And in addition, many of the LEDCs are dependent on just a small number of primary products, so keeping all their eggs in that one basket. Problem with that is that if your one or two crops fail because of a bad year, then your whole economy can suffer. So the key idea here is that within colonialism in Europe in the 19th century, was industrialised and was needing raw materials, cheap raw materials. It had taken over many of the LEDCs, including Africa, and they set up the colonies to export cheap primary products back to Europe. And the roads and railways were basically designed to help with that. So if you had a country here, and this was the sea, and you had a raw material up here, the railway line was designed to really get that to the port and then from there to Europe. So that was the situation in the 19th century. By the time you get here to the 21st century, at independence then, the LEDCs didn't have the secondary sector developed because they were mostly exporting primary products. So they were behind the MEDCs and they were struggling to catch up. So it kept them locked in a poverty cycle. The lack of money to invest in the secondary sector meant that they had to keep exporting primary products. These earn less money, keeping them with lack of money to invest in this cycle keeps going around, keeping them trapped in poverty. And here's an example of the price fluctuation going up here for coffee. Next up, we have the environmental factors, and we're really making 3 points based on this. LEDCs are less able to cope with natural disasters because when they're affected by earthquakes and so forth, because of their poverty, they're not able to prepare buildings in advance. But it also feeds in trapping them in poverty. They have to divert money to dealing with the aftermath of disasters rather than being able to invest in long-term development. They're also at greater risk. Just the areas that many of them lie in are particularly vulnerable. So you've got diseases such as malaria, you've got drought and desertification in Africa, you have natural disasters such as cyclones or typhoons and so on. Then you've got the loss of vital natural environmental assets in LEDCs. So to generate economic development, they're putting a lot of their natural resources under pressure. So tropical rainforests are being cleared for timber and for land. This is a short-term solution, but it's not environmentally sustainable. And the third factor that we're covering here is the political factors. Two of them here: corruption and spending on war. If the government is corrupt, it's going to hinder development. Money that should be spent on development is siphoned off or taken away by corrupt officials. In fact, today in these days, to qualify for international aid, a country has to demonstrate a certain degree of a lack of corruption. That means that there are actually a few countries in Africa that are struggling to get the likes of debt relief because of the corruption that is going on there. Then there's the spending on war, civil war and the neighbouring country. If you have a look over here, the countries that are spending most on war, well, there's America, there's Russia, but you can see that a whole bunch of these in Africa as well are spending a lot of money on war. A lot of their GDP is spent on that. And the final factor is debt. Now, we've covered a little bit here about how it arose. I don't think that's hugely important, but basically what happened whenever the LEDCs became independent and they needed money, where are they going to get it from? They got it from banks and MEDCs. They spent the money thinking it was a safe investment, But it didn't work out as hoped because the interest rates went up. The LEDCs found themselves in a situation where they couldn't afford debt, so they actually had to borrow money to pay off the first lenders. That's how it arose. But more significantly here is, what are the impacts of the debt crisis? Whenever the second set of loans came in, they came with conditions called structural adjustment programs, or SAPs. Basically, the banks wanted to make sure they would get their money back, and they did so by two types of conditions. The LEDCs had to earn more by growing cash crops for export, and they had to spend less by cutting back on public services. Now, it was hoped that this would help them to develop economically, but in terms of social development, it had dreadful impacts. Now, this little graph has got split here, unfortunately, but enough of it you can see here to make the point. So this is debt as a percentage of government spending, and this is social services, health and education as a percentage of government spending. You can see this side of the bar graph is bigger than this side. They were spending more here on debt repayment than they were on providing social development for the people of their own country. Now, more recently, there has been an attempt to wipe out some of the debt. The HIPC, Highly Indebted Poor Countries Programme, was introduced in 1996. It's debt relief for countries that are meeting a range of economic management and performance targets, and also countries that are demonstrating that there's not a huge amount of corruption. Now, there's some success. Tanzania here has its annual debt repayment reduced by 170 million. So spent money then in education. Student enrolment has increased by 1.6 million. So it shows you how the development can be helped whenever the debt is wiped out. But the main focus here has been on those 4 factors that are hindering development. I hope this video has helped.